G'day, ZIGGYD here, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my review of Hand of Fate, the roguelite dungeon crawling card game that's not a card game. This game is a very interesting and unique mix of genres, and it doesn't really sort of fall into any one category, but if I had to put it anywhere, it would be like the roguelite dungeon crawler style game. You essentially navigate a dungeon. You delve deeper into a dungeon, fighting, random encounters, dealing with traps, dealing with puzzles, and fighting with actual action combat. But everything, rather than being generated through random numbers in the background, is generated by a deck of cards. So it uses cards heavily, but it's not a card game. It's very interesting stuff. Let's go ahead and jump on in here, and you guys will get to see what this game is all about. So as you can see from the intro screen just here, just before we go into the main menu, is that cards are a very big feature of this game. You can see all these floating cards just here, and this guy who is magically floating these cards is the dealer, the guy that we're playing against in this card game. Now, as you can see, each of those cards that flies past has various things on it. It has, different enemy types, it has different items, gear, gain or lose life or food, gold. Basically everything in the game is handled through cards, and this kind of sets you up to get into these encounters that are dictated by cards that you then play out yourself. It's a very, very sort of unique way of approaching this. I've seen tabletop RPGs that do this, that use this idea, but this is the first sort of video game that I've seen has take this sort of approach on it, and it works really well, and the game is really, really sort of addictive and satisfying and intriguing as you play through it. It's got a few other really good things I want to talk about first, but let's sort of go in and I'll show you sort of how this game is structured. So there's two modes in this. There is story mode and endless mode. The story mode I have played through 95% of the way. I'm on the final mission, which is very difficult. And endless mode is what you would imagine. You get to start at the start. It starts off pretty easy, like a lot of roguelike games where you delve deeper and deeper down and things get harder and harder. The endless mode is basically see how far you can get, and it comes complete with scores and sort of like trying to beat your best of, I got to floor 16. How deep did you get? So let's go on into story mode just here, and I'll sort of show you how this is structured. So, story mode features 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 missions. Essentially what you do is you play through each of these missions, and they are a series of kind of like floors or boards of cards that you will progress through, and then at the end of that you'll face off against a boss. You can see the Jack of Dust, Jack of Skulls, Queen of Dust, and you basically progress through each of these bosses. Each of these things represents, there's 3 tiers of boss, Jack, Queen, and King, as in true card fashion, and then each of the type of cards, so Dust is bandits, for example, the Skulls is skeletons, the Plague is rats, and the Scales is like lizardmen. So you sort of face off against each of these different things. Now, something I want to talk about on this screen, and I think is one of the really, really good things about this game, is that the difficulty curve in this game is almost perfect. It has got one of the best, most meticulously crafted difficulty curves I have ever experienced in a game like this. Now, usually with roguelikes or roguelite games, RNG plays a big factor, and that's true because this is a card game. The draw and the way the deck is shuffled is essentially RNG. But to have such a perfectly crafted difficulty curve in a heavy RNG-based game is like kind of mind-blowing how good it feels.
We don't have forever.
He's so impatient. So, the way that this works is, like, the first 3 or 4 missions are fairly easy. Like, the first one is very simple. Things start off very simple. You go in, you progress through a ton of simple encounters, you have simple fights, and the actual combat, which is kind of action Batman Arkam Asylum style combat, which is essentially attacking encounters and interrupts and things like that, is very simple. You basically just, tap X to attack if you're using a controller, and then you tap Y to counterattack whenever the enemies go to counterattack. It can be played with keyboard or controller as well, by the way, guys. So then as you progress through, things become, more difficult. You face more difficult mob types. The bandits are very simple and easy to deal with. The skeletons start off pretty simple, but start to get a little bit more complex. The scale monsters have shields, and they tend to block a lot more. And the game sort of naturally gets a little bit more difficult as it goes. But there's also these items or these upgrades just here. Now, what upgrades do is they make your character more powerful. They give you, like, you know, this one gives you stronger counterattacks, increased stun, and new starting gear, but it also increases the strength of different things as well, and most importantly, which is I think the biggest thing, is it adds extra abilities to enemy monsters. So in this one here, adds throwing knives to bandits. So after your first three missions, you're encountering bandits, and it's a very simple sort of game of just attacking and counterattacking. But then they start using ranged attacks, and you have to start dealing with ranged attacks whilst also dealing with melee attacks. And each of these upgrades does this same sort of thing. So Lizardman, strength increase, you know, you get basic strength increases here, and this gives you, like, you know, starting bonuses and things like that as well. But as we move down, the Ratmen get a leap attack, you know, skeletons start to reanimate after being downed, and each of these upgrades does something like that, makes things more complicated. Lizardmen start getting fire armor, which means you take a dot if you attack a Lizardman that has a fire armor on. So things get more and more complex, and the result is that basically every stage is like the perfect feeling amount of difficulty increase after each one. First couple missions I thought were really easy, and I thought the game was very simple. Started to get more and more complex. Around this point of the story mode, on the third tier, I had to start doing multiple attempts. Like these ones, I got through on the first go. On these ones here, though, I had to start doing multiple attempts, and it got to the point where the third last and the second last mission here, I had to do about 5 times each before I finally had a successful run, before I sort of mastered and constructed things in a way that I was able to deal with the issues I was presented with. And the final mission, which I'm still on, which is to defeat the dealer himself, I am still stuck on. I know that I'm eventually going to get it, and it's so difficult yet achievable that I know when I do get it, it's going to be incredibly satisfying. So your mileage may vary. The difficulty curves are always, you know, a personal thing, but the game feels perfect in the difficulty curve. I've spent a lot of time talking about this, but I think it's one of the best things about this game is they've really, really nailed it. So, I'm going to jump into endless mode now, and to sort of continue with my review, I'm going to show you how the game actually plays, because you're like, what's the actual gameplay of this game? It's so unusual before you see it. It's like, how does it actually work?
This is where the conclusion begins.
So what you just saw there was he dealed out the cards. He shuffled all the cards. He used his cool magic and cool music to shuffle everything out. And he does like a lot of narration as well, which is kind of reminiscent of things like Darkest Dungeon recently, which is very cool and atmospheric for the game. Now, the complexity of the game, what you'll see at the moment, is a bit of a mixed bag. I'm playing endless mode, which means that the actual things that I'll face will be quite simple at the start because I'm on floor 1 of an endless dungeon. However, I have a bunch of extra stuff that I have unlocked. Actually, I think, you know what? Before we go into... that's alright, we'll go. I'll show you guys. I'll sort of just discuss it briefly, actually. There's deck construction in this game, so a big part of how you approach the challenge of this game is actually you get to choose what things you'll face off against and what things you'll take into battle with you. There's 2 decks. Eventually that becomes 2 decks of 40 cards, I believe. And the positive deck, or the beneficial deck, is basically the gear that you can possibly get, so your weapons and trinkets and things like that. You get to essentially put whatever you want into that deck. Now, the dealer will sometimes shuffle extra things into your deck to make things more or less challenging, but you get to have a lot of control over what things you'll receive as you progress through each of the different missions. Now, this is true for story mode, but not exactly true for endless mode. And then there's also the second deck, which is the encounter deck. Now, there are a series of different encounters. A lot of encounters have multiple tiers, and by completing one encounter, you unlock the next card to complete the encounter, so there'll be a series of different encounters, and these kind of create like side quest story arcs in themselves, and you get to construct this deck of enemy encounters that you'll have. Again, the dealer can shuffle things into that, but it means that it's kind of like got this pick-a-path style novel thing going on, where you get to sort of dictate the sort of adventure that you want to have. Now, endless mode's a little bit different. Endless mode has all of the cards that you've unlocked by completing events in the past, but you don't get to pick your deck. Everything is in there in endless mode. So let's go on in. Right off the bat there, I got a blessing card. This is kind of like where I'm at in the game now. I start off with some things. I start off with a blessing card, and I start off with an extra trinket. Got myself a Ring of Peace, which in which the player did not enter combat. The player receives 1 gold for every blessing they possess. Okay, so if I avoid combat in encounters, I'm going to get extra gold based on the blessings I have. Now, you can see that there's a series of cards here, and you can imagine these as a dungeon with different rooms, or moving tiles across like a world map, and the cards essentially represent them. So I'm going to move one to the left here, and I have a random encounter, which is, you know, the actual card as it flips over, which is like just a really cool sort of feeling. This is a Wife's Fury. While traveling through a small town, you're accosted by a furious woman who shouts at you from the door of her homestead. "You there! You look like you can handle yourself. My husband was supposed to come home hours ago, but instead is with his pals drinking away all our coin." A wife's fury. A woman scorned. They left the spoils from their latest job here. If you go and teach him a lesson, you can take your pick. What do you say? So I get a bit of a choice here. I can leave the wife to deal with herself, and a spoiler alert, if I choose that option, I suffer a negative consequence. She, you know, in her frustration, she's pretty angry, and she's got some biceps on her too, check it out. She will actually attack me, and I'll be dealt a pain card, which can reduce my life or something like that. I'm going to agree to help her here, so I'm going to go to the tavern to confront the husband. Now, here's someone with some sense. I would go crack his skull myself, but our dragon cow is birthing a litter, and I don't know what a dragon cow is, and might burn the whole place down. So there's these different like storied encounters, and a lot of them have decisions. Now, sometimes the outcomes of those decisions are randomized as well, and sometimes they become more complex depending on when you're playing. Like, if you're playing this encounter at the start of Endless Mode, it's going to be easier. If you play it on floor 15 of Endless Mode, the encounter is going to be more complex. So the cards actually change as well. So I find the woman's husband, who just so happens to turn out to be the Jack of Dust, which is one of the bosses. So I'm like, okay. Well, that's, you know, that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting a random bandit. This happens to be the wife of, basically, the Prince of the Bandits. So, alright, maybe I reconsider here. And he's also got 2 companions with him, of course. So, I have some options here. I can be like, maybe change my mind and join in on his drinking game. Or I can threaten him and see if I can, you know, get him to head home. So I'm gonna go for the threaten him. I'm gonna try and, you know, I'm gonna try to deal with it. Jack of Dust, I've dealt with him before. I think we can do this just fine. So here we have the success or failure cards. Now I only have a 25% chance of success here. So this is a pretty tough one to get. Now it is, you know, it's random. It's a random shuffle, but it is possible to track cards in this game. Now, card tracking is kind of like a mini game within itself. Some shuffles are easy to track. If you see a card flip over and then go over the top of the deck and then come off, it's very easy to track. But if it goes onto the top and then shuffles into the middle, then you're going to lose track of the card. And some shuffles are faster. There's actually things in the game that affect the shuffle speed and the amount of shuffles as well. So it gets almost impossible to track cards in some shuffles, whereas this one wasn't too bad. I think it's probably somewhere on the right. I don't know, it went through the middle. The success card went through the middle. I'm going to try card 3. It's failure. I totally lost track of it. It was number 1. So, no luck there. So the threats were not successful. I hear worse threats for my wife every day of the week, he scoffs. So, with the look of that wife, I imagine that I would take her threats seriously. So now, we're forced into combat with these guys, and you guys get to see the combat. So the combat moves into this action combat mode, and you'll see our character get geared up, and that's based on our cards. Medium armor equipped, Crown of Hindsight equipped, our shield is equipped, and then our axe is equipped. These are all done by cards through the sort of card inventory system. So now I have the action combat mode. I'm going to deflect the projectile, so if there's a green icon above the enemy, I can potentially counter them. If there's a red icon, that's a non-counterable and I need to dodge it. I have a dodge just here. And I also have an interrupt, which I can use with the shield mask just there. I'm going to deflect that projectile. Otherwise, these guys are bandits, and as I was saying, bandits are pretty easy to sort of deal with. It's very easy to counter the attacks of bandits. Now, the Jack here, the Bandit Prince, is a little bit harder because he has some non-counterable attacks that I need to dodge out of the way of. But as far as bosses goes, he's the simplest of all of the bosses. So I can just sort of take things slowly here and just, you know, focus on my counter attacks. Try and take this sort of, you know, at a reasonable pace without taking any damage. Now, damage is permanent. You'll see my life in the bottom left corner there, and if I take damage, I will have that, you know, that damage as I move around the rest of the map, and that can make later encounters more difficult. So let's continue countering here. It's pretty action-packed at the moment. But you can see that the screen's starting to get blurry. I took some damage there from a non-counterable attack. The screen was starting to get blurry because I was building up my my combo meter. The higher you get in the combo meter, the more powerful your attacks become, but also the screen starts to blur and things become a little bit more intense. I think you get like some more slow motion stuff like that too. Whoops! Alright, focusing on my commentary and not on my dodging and blocking. Alright, so we should be able to take this guy pretty easily now. I need to dodge this attack, because that's not one that I can counter. Otherwise, I can go pretty ham on him here and try and take him out. Oh, I took another hit there. So I've taken 20 damage now almost, or 18 damage. Which means that I'm going to have to sort of deal with that loss of life as we move forwards. But we did accost the husband. We did Perhaps teach him a lesson. I think it was a pretty severe lesson. You return to the woman, bringing her battered husband with you. I just sort of plop him down on the doorstep. Just drop him in the corner and take what you want from his rubbish, she says, handing you a sack. So now we get the choice of his spoils from his recent raid. And, oh, some pretty nice items here. I can take an enormous shield, which is an item that allows me to stun and knock enemies down. Major Scorn, I can't remember what that does, but we can actually click on it and see. Cooldowns are reduced by 10%, but damage is also reduced by 10%.
Exchange is the simplest application of the law.
I'm going to take Scorching Zeal, a fire mace that also has an ability tied to it as well. So as you get more and more complex and more powerful gear, you start to unlock extra abilities as well. This one actually has a weapon ability, which means that I can do like a burst of flame from the hammer every so often. There's also artifacts as well. I'll take you guys through the inventory now that we've done that, and I'll show you guys some of the things. So this is the inventory screen. So you can see I've got my Scorching Zeal equipped, and it does have its fire ability. You can get artifacts, which give you another special ability in combat as well. You can get gloves, which provide some utility effects. Trinkets, you can wear as many rings as you want. I don't think there's a limit on rings. I've stacked many rings in the past. And these will provide different interesting effects as well. Your shield is for counter-attacking primarily, and most of the bonuses of higher powered shields will reflect that. Helmets are a mixture of utility in combat stuff. Some of them are primarily for the actual board, like the Crown of Hindsight. When I get to the end of my current section of the board, all of the previous encounter cards will be revealed, so I can potentially go back and take anything I want. There's other helmets, however, that help in combat instead. This is Blessings and Curses. I have the Toxic Blood Blessing, which poisons enemies that attack me. And the interesting thing about Blessings and Curses is they can actually have an impact in encounters too. The Toxic Blood, for example, if I get stung by a scorpion, the scorpion will die and I'll be immune to the poison. So that can kind of save me from a negative outcome from one of the encounters. I'm not going to spoil which. And then we have, medium armor, which is primarily defensive. It reduces how much damage you take, but some armors have different abilities. So there's quite a lot of gearing, and you get to kind of gear your character by what cards you put in the deck, right? So if you want to go for a particular build, you put the cards in the deck. There's no guarantee you're going to get them, but putting them in the deck gives you a chance of getting them. So I'm going to play forwards a little bit more. We're sort of pushing for time on this review a little bit here, but I'll push forwards and I'll show you guys some of the other encounters and how things work. So this is a Charity 4, you'll see the number just there, the Roman numerals. This indicates that this is the 4th event in a series of events. So I've completed Charity 1, 2, and 3, which were each separate and different encounters, but with a similar sort of theme of bumping into a random priest. So Charity 4 here asks that I donate some food to the priest. Now, Charity 4 requires me I donate a lot of food, but I can donate less and potentially still have a positive outcome. I can of course decline and just pass on by. Now if I do donate him some food and I am successful, then I can potentially receive a blessing from the priest. Now the thing about this is though, food is very important. Every time you take a step on a new card, every time you move cards, you consume 1 food. Now, you will be healed whenever you consume food by 5 health. That can be changed with items. But if you run out of food and start moving around, you lose 10 health every time you move, so that can kill you very quickly. Starvation is a very quick killer. So I'm going to give him a little bit of food here. I think I can afford to sacrifice 5 food. And we'll get a chance here. It's only a 25% chance of getting a blessing, but I'll try and see if I can track the card. Now, it unfortunately went through the middle, and I have no idea where it went. I think it went into the middle and then maybe shuffled out to the right. I was kind of right on the right, but not exactly card 4. But he still gave me a blessing, so maybe the success was for 2 blessings. But for donating some food, I still got a blessing here. Will of the Gods, which allows me to get some extra gold in combat if I kill a targeted enemy that the gods instruct me to kill. So I'm going to move to the left here. You'll see a pile of gold on this. This is kind of one of the upgrades that I've received in the story mode. So story mode affects endless mode. So by playing through story mode, you unlock extra things to do in endless mode. But you can also unlock things in endless mode to use in story mode as well. So there's a bit of crossover there. Pick up a bit of extra gold, and we've got the Deadman's Gorge encounter. So while crossing the ancient rope bridges of Deadman's Gorge, you hear sounds of movement below. It's an ambush. Draw 1 monster card. It's only the 2 of dust, so very easy encounter. We're on the first floor of the endless mode just here, so the encounters are all quite simple, but they get more and more complex the deeper you go. So we'll go do this fight. This is literally 2 bandits. This is probably the easiest fight you can do in the game, and I'll kill these guys very quickly. I can show you guys my weapon ability though, which does a burst of flame just there, and wrecks everything. This kind of reminds me of the only real criticism I have of this game. Essentially, there are some frame rate issues in combat that I've encountered. I've heard that there's some frame rate issues on the console versions of the game as well during transitions. But in combat, certain abilities, like there's, for example, a Storm Tempest ability that creates like a swirling storm around you, can cause some severe frame rate drops. Now, it doesn't happen often enough that it's a big bother, but for certain abilities, like that Tempest Storm ability thing, that is basically every time you use it, you're gonna get a bit of a frame rate drop, and that could be a little bit frustrating in combat. So that's the only sort of issue I've had with this game, is that there are some frame rate issues in combat with certain abilities. So it's just one to keep in mind. So we got 3 gain cards from this, which are randomized positive bonuses from our positive bonus deck. This one's interesting. We draw 4 cards. We get to see what they are. And then we get to choose whether they're on the top or the bottom of the deck, so whether we'll bump into them. Now, I mean, these are 2 rings, and I love Chain Bomb. Arrow Cut is, you know, average. I think I'll put this on the top of the deck by pressing B. Here's our next gain card. We got ourselves some food from this encounter, and 40 gold. Really nice gold draw there. That's like I think that's one of the highest gold draws. So now I can move this way, and as you can see, each time I take a step, I consume food. So I got to watch out for my food supplies. Hopefully, we can run into a store and spend some of our gold to buy some more food. Treasure chest encounter. This one can go very brutally. It's actually a pretty hard encounter. The treasure chest may hold great wealth, but the chamber may be trapped. Let's approach the treasure chest. We have a 50-50 chance. Now, I think this gets harder in higher levels as well. I don't think I lost track of the cards again, but managed to luckily pick success there. Now, if you get failure on that, it triggers obviously a trap, and things go south pretty quickly. But we're not out of the woods yet. We still have to deal with the actual chest itself. Let's attempt to pry it open here. We have a pretty good chance of success. Okay, I think I saw the success one move here. Oh, I got the failure! Wow, I'm terrible tracking cards. Trust me, you can track cards. I'm just terrible. So, the treasure chest stubbornly refuses to give away to your attempts. You leave disappointed. See, that's interesting, because this event in higher level zones, rather than just sort of, you know, not opening, the chest can actually turn out to be a mimic, and it bites you and attempts to consume you, dealing a lot of damage. So it's interesting the way these encounters change as you go. Now what I'm going to do, just before we finish here, I'm going to forfeit this endless mode here. Endless mode's a lot of fun. I've played through several times now, and you know, I had runs that went to floor 16, I had runs that went to floor 10, I had runs that went to floor 1 and I failed, so it can be a bit of a mixed bag. And there's the score screen just there. You get score for, you know, how far you make, that multiplies your score, as well as the actual score for the encounters and the gold and things like that you get. So I want to show you guys just 2 things more quick, 2 quick things here before I close out this review. And this has been pretty detailed. Hopefully you guys sort of appreciate that level of detail. This is a different sort of review style. Usually what I'll do is I'll you know, do it like a post commentary and then edit footage together. I don't know, but I felt like this would work well for this game. Now, what I'm going to show you guys first is, this is the dealer encounter here, which is the highest level in the story mode. Now, this actual mode here, or this this particular encounter, has extra curses laid on top. The dealer's curse, the player receives a curse at each new dungeon level. So, basically, every time you go deeper into the dungeon, you get cursed by a random curse. And then, your player cannot receive any blessings whatsoever because of excommunication. So, they're particularly brutal.
Go.
In here, though, I can show you the deck builder. Now, you can use just a recommended equipment and encounter deck, or you can build your own custom decks. So, as I was talking about here, we have ones with these little medallions of events that we haven't completed yet. So I can take something like, I wouldn't mind encountering the Curse of Davy Jones, so I can add that into the deck. And if there's something that I found that I don't really like, I can remove them. You'll see some locked ones here. To remove these from your deck, you have to actually complete the event. So I have to defeat 3 golem hunting parties in order to remove these from my deck, and I have to defeat the dealer to remove him from my story mode deck as well for this mission. So let's go ahead and I'll jump in here because I just want to show you guys, you know, how much more difficult it can get here. So that's our deck constructed just there. I'm gonna jump in the game. I'll cut forwards a little bit here, guys, and I'll be able to show you guys sort of some of the more nasty ones. Oh man, look at all those nasty things that's shuffling into the deck. So this is the first curse of our dungeon just here, the dealer draws Dealer's Spite, which whenever we draw a huge success card, so whenever we have a successful outcome, we also draw a pain card, which makes it a little bit less successful, so that's pretty nasty. Pain cards can be anything from losing life to food or gold, or even losing max life, which can be pretty brutal. I have a ring that allows me to see upcoming stores. That's a blessing, but I don't get it because I'm excommunicated. And I get myself another ring just here.
Run through these conversations in my mind over and over again. Wondered how it all ends. Will I ever know the truth?
So here's the golem hunting party encounter that I showed you guys earlier. This one has one lava golem, which is pretty easy. I'm going to attack them. Now, I get a chance to sort of sneak up on them. If I fail this, I can potentially take some extra damage here. Let's see. Oh, and I failed! Well, let's see what the negative outcome is. 1 health pain card, which this means I'm going to move into this encounter with a little bit less life than what we could have had. And we lost 15 health, which is a bit of a major injury, so that sucks. But let's go into the lava golem fight. This just shows off one of the higher level monsters. These guys by themselves aren't too dangerous, but when they're combined with other monsters or multiple lava golems, they can be difficult to deal with. So also, the zones that you encounter change depending on the level as well. So this is a high level story mode mission, and this is the most complex of these particular lava golem encounters, because you can see that this is a large sort of zone with a lot of traps. So there's like these spring traps hiding in the bushes there, and there's dart traps. Thankfully though, we can use traps against our lava golem friend here. So I can draw him onto the darts. Oh, or I can draw him onto that, or I can get knocked onto the trap myself. I can draw him onto that trap and he'll take some damage. So I can play pretty defensively and draw him over these different traps. There's some other traps over here, if I remember this stage correctly. There's some traps over here. Let's draw him onto this. There we go. Now what we can actually do is we can fight him here and potentially knock him into some of those traps as well. That's a non-blockable attack explosion there. And that one as well I need to dodge out of the way of. And that one. As you can see, these guys are a little bit more aggressive. I should be able to take him out pretty easily though, with the extra damage from the traps as well. You get some pretty intense fights, guys, when you have zones that are full of like 18 enemies, and it's a tiny area, and there's traps everywhere, and there's like ranged attacks going off, and there's enemies leaping around, and there's poison on the ground. It gets pretty brutal intense, especially when you get down to like, you know, I've got 1 HP left, but I really need to make it through this fight. Then you can have some pretty intense fights. And you end up playing a lot better when you have lower HP in this game. At least that's how I've found it to be. So we made it through this encounter successfully, which this one has a little bit of a bonus as well, some thankful local villagers. We'll put some food on the board for us to get, so there's 5 food over there. Alright, let's do one last encounter here. It is a local peasant. This is a nice friendly encounter. I put this in my deck because in constructing the deck to try and defeat the dealer, which is a very hard story mode mission, I tried to put as many positive encounters into the deck as I could. This one, if I give the woman some food, she'll give some food to her children. I've always had positive things here, and she gives me a relic of her deceased husband, which was a gloves card, and I've put only 2 pairs of gloves in my deck. One of those is mage gloves, so hopefully I'll get that, which is my favorite pair of gloves, which causes a chain reaction whenever I kill an enemy. I got fleet cuffs, that's unfortunate. Well, that's still not that bad. Increased move speed. So I got myself an extra pair of gloves there for helping out the peasant. Of course, sacrificing some food though can make things a little bit harder. She also provided some scouting information for me too as well, showing me things at the board. So guys, hopefully this has been enough to sort of help you guys make a decision about whether this is a game you're interested in. My final recommendation is that if you're into roguelite dungeon crawler games, then like for the price, I think this game is under $20. This is one that's worth picking up. It's very unique. Like it's something completely different to a lot of other games I've played. It's legitimately fun, and that difficulty curve is just perfectly tailored, so it's a really satisfying experience progressing through story mode. And I've played this game for 4 days so far, and if there's any sort of expansions or DLC that comes out for the game, I'll definitely be picking it up myself. And I may sort of duck in and play a bit of endless mode every now and then, because it's pretty good fun. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed this review. If you have any questions about the game, of course, feel free to ask in the comments below. That is it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.